Federal agents recently disrupted a dangerous, coordinated bomb plot. I mean, this was allegedly targeting American businesses and law enforcement on New Year's Eve. But it's the startling details about the group's radical ideology and, critically, their military training. That's what really demands a deep dive.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Our sources detail the disruption of a major domestic terror plot orchestrated by a group calling itself the Turtle Island Liberation Front.
Or TLF for short.
Right, TLF. And this is so much more than a typical law enforcement bust. It's a vital insight into a highly motivated, organized cell that had moved way beyond just online talk. They were in the active assembly phase of complex pipe bombs with very specific lethal targets in mind.
So our mission for you today is to really unpack the source material around this incident. We're looking at a plot that officials, including former Attorney General Pam Bondi, called a massive and horrific terror plot.
And the U.S. attorney was even more specific. Citing the investigation, he labeled them radicalized Antifa-like groups.
Driven by a pretty wide-ranging ideology: far-left, anti-government, anti-capitalist, and pro-Palestine.
And to really understand the gravity here, you have to focus on three things. First, the depth of the physical planning. Second, that philosophical rejection of the democratic process that fuels them. And third, maybe the most urgent part, is the tactical capacity the cell had because they recruited people with specialized military expertise.
This wasn't just a protest that got out of hand.
Not even close. This was a strategic assault on U.S. infrastructure and the rule of law.
Okay, so let's start with the plot itself. It was called Operation Midnight Sun. 4 suspects, Audrey Carroll, Zachary Page, Dante Gaffield, and Tina Lai, arrested in Lucerne Valley, California. Take us to that moment, December 12th in the Mojave Desert. What was the FBI seeing?
They were caught red-handed. I mean, the arrests happened while they were actively building improvised explosive devices. They were out there in the remote desert, working under a tent at a table, unloading all the key components: PVC pipes, fuses, other precursors you need to make functional bombs.
So the FBI moved in just in time.
It seems like it, yes. Surveillance suggests they intervened right as the assembly process was, nearing completion.
And the target selection for Operation Midnight Sun was extremely deliberate. This wasn't random at all.
No, not at all. The plan was for simultaneous detonations, right at midnight on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Yeah, and the goal was to hit 5 specific locations, all operated by 2 unnamed U.S. logistics centers.
So for you, the listener, we need to be clear what that means. When an anti-capitalist group targets logistics centers,
they're targeting the circulatory system of American commerce, distribution, the supply chain. It's a direct shot meant to cause maximum economic chaos. It ties their violence directly to their platform.
And the sources point to Audrey Carroll, age 30, as the alleged ringleader. She apparently created an 8-page handwritten plot document.
And this wasn't just some, manifesto as a technical document. It allegedly had detailed instructions for building complex pipe bombs and specific measures on how to avoid leaving forensic evidence.
That level of detail really dials up the threat level.
It absolutely does. We're talking about sophisticated devices, not just crude explosives. But what makes this even more sinister is that the violence wasn't supposed to stop there.
What do you mean?
The documents also allegedly laid out follow-up attacks for early 2026, specifically targeting federal immigration and customs enforcement agents, ICE agents, and their vehicles.
That focus on law enforcement is a critical piece of the puzzle. It's an explicit attack on the state itself.
It tells you everything about their core motivation, and you have to put that threat against ICE into context. Our sources cite data showing that ICE agents have faced an astonishing 8,000% increase in death threats since crackdowns on illegal immigration began.
8,000%.
And a roughly 1,100% jump in physical assaults. So for a group to specifically earmark these agents for future attacks, it just shows this profound systemic hatred for federal authority.
Now, to pull something like this off, you need tight operational security. OPSEC. How did this TILF cell manage their planning?
Their OPSEC was highly calculated. It's another sign of their sophistication. They used aliases communicated in an encrypted signal chat group they called the Order of the Black Lotus.
So hidden from plain sight.
Exactly. And the plan itself demanded really specific security measures, using burner phones, wearing black bloc disguises to beat surveillance and facial recognition, and even altering their walking patterns to defeat forensic gait analysis. Then, after the attacks, destroy all electronics.
That is a highly disciplined, almost military-style operation.
It is. It's the difference between disorganized vandalism and a committed terrorist cell. The level of detail suggests professional guidance, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, we need to understand the ideology, the fire that fuels all this.
Right. Let's unpack that name. The Turtle Island Liberation Front. What are the core beliefs driving them to this kind of violence?
Well, TILF describes itself as a political group seeking the liberation of occupied Turtle Island.
And for listeners who aren't familiar, Turtle Island is a name used by many indigenous peoples for North America.
Exactly. So by using that term, they immediately frame the United States not as a legitimate country, but as a violent, illegitimate colonial occupation.
And that framing gives them the philosophical justification for, well, total war against the state.
It does. Their platform is explicitly far left, anti-government, anti-capitalist, and anti-imperialist. They're not looking for reform, they're looking for dissolution. Their social media posts openly argued that, quote, peaceful protest will never be enough against what they call fascist colonizers.
And here's the key line, right? They said, we cannot vote ourselves out of a mass colonizer occupation.
That's the one. That phrase is a total rejection of the entire democratic process. It's a declaration that the system is broken and that only direct violent action is left.
It's the ultimate justification for using pipe bombs.
It is. If you believe the government is an illegitimate occupying force, then in their minds, sabotage and terrorism become necessary acts of liberation. And while the main TILF group seems small, under 900 Instagram followers, officials see this cell as a dangerous splinter group in a much larger and escalating ecosystem of radical violence.
And we should touch on the demographic details from the sources. 2 of the 5 arrested, Zachary Page and Micah James Legnan, are reported to be self-identified transgender activists. One journalist reporting on this even used the politically charged term Trantifa militants to describe them.
And I think the crucial focus here has to remain on the intense radicalization toward violence. Because regardless of anyone's individual identity, what really elevates this group's danger profile isn't just the ideology, it's the tactical expertise that ideology was able to attract.
Which brings us directly to the 5th suspect, Micah James Legnan, arrested in Louisiana. Legnan, who used aliases like Kateri and Darkwood Sheher, represents the trained, physical threat that makes this whole plot so much more dangerous.
Legnan's background is a massive concern for investigators. He's a former U.S. Marine. He had combat training.
And not just that.
No. He was also a New Iberia police officer until very recently, from 2019 and 2022. He was trained by our military and sworn to uphold the law, yet he allegedly chose to use those skills to plan terror attacks against his own country.
So how was he caught? What did that reveal?
He was stopped on Highway 90 in Louisiana. And at the time, he was loading an assault rifle, a pistol, body armor, and a gas canister into his car.
He was on the move.
Investigators believed he was heading to New Orleans to carry out an attack, that his intent was imminent action.
And the search of his home really confirmed his role as the tactical expert for this cell.
Oh, absolutely. The search turned up sniper and SWAT training manuals, but it went beyond just possessing them. Legnan was allegedly in that encrypted Order of the Black Lotus chat, discussing how he would train his California comrades in firearms and urban warfare. He was the force multiplier.
Let's elaborate on that idea of a force multiplier. For you, the listener, why is a former Marine and police officer a fundamentally greater threat than just an ideologically aligned amateur?
Well, an amateur can be radicalized, but they often lack the how. They don't have the methodology to turn ideology into legal reality. A Marine, especially one with police experience, brings immediate high-level skills. Weapons proficiency, logistics planning, counter-surveillance, how to beat police tactics.
How to build bombs.
And, critically for this plot, the knowledge of explosive construction and timing that separates a crude device from a complex pipe bomb. Legnan was the component that turned a group of angry activists into a sophisticated terror cell.
And this fits into a really frightening trend that the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, has been tracking.
It does. It confirms the fear that extremist networks are actively recruiting people with military training. CSIS data shows a huge jump. Active duty or reserve military personnel were linked to just 1.5% of domestic terror plots in 2019.
And in 2020.
It jumped to 6.4%. So this isn't an isolated case. It's a known vulnerability where tactical training gets repurposed for anti-government violence.
Legnan's own social media posts leave, no doubt about his violent tint.
The rhetoric was just incredibly violent. He talked about targeting federal agents, saying it was, quote, time to recreate Waco TX with these efters. He also posted obsessively about killing people he labeled Nazis, claiming, and this is another quote from the sources, dead Nazis are harmless. Therefore, if I kill a Nazi, I'm saving lives.
That's the final stage of radicalization, isn't it? The belief that your violence is not only justified, but is actually necessary to save lives.
It's what moves someone from just sharing angry posts to actually assembling pipe bombs in the desert.
So this whole case really serves as a stark reminder. This plot shows how online radicalization can move into tangible, meticulously planned violence. An 8-page blueprint, sourced materials, people trained in IEDs and military tactics.
And the law enforcement response has been one of unified alarm. U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley called it another reminder about the dangers that radicalized Antifa-like groups pose.
Louisiana's Attorney General Liz Murrill called the plot extremely disturbing.
And even after the arrest, the mindset persists. One affiliated Antifa blog, according to our sources, urged comrades to continue direct action and use caution to waste the government's precious resources.
The fight continues, in their eyes.
The operational commitment to violence remains active. The threat is ongoing.
So our deep dive today has shown you that domestic terror threats are, well, they're not monolithic. This was a sophisticated, organized, far-left plot targeting the very foundations of American commerce and law enforcement.
And they were using high-level OPSEC, encrypted comms, and most disturbingly, specialized military and tactical training. Radical ideology is now actively leveraging sophisticated skills.
So considering this growing trend, and the TILF's explicit belief that they cannot vote themselves out of a mass colonizer occupation, we're left with a really chilling question for you to think about. What happens when this deeply rooted anti-American ideology consistently merges with hard-earned military and tactical expertise? When it creates cells capable of highly lethal coordinated attacks? It raises the question of how a free society stays secure when the biggest threats are now homegrown, strategically trained, and dedicated not to reforming, but to the absolute destruction of our institutions. That is the lasting complexity this deep dive forces us all to confront.